Good morning. Welcome to Psychology. Today's lesson obviously is coming to you via video rather than in the classroom. Hopefully in September we will all be back in the classroom and I will get a chance obviously to meet you all individually. So for Psychology then, for the summer, this is a new subject for all of you, and many of the concepts that we will cover are all very new as well, and that maybe you haven't met in any of the other subjects along the way. I'm absolutely thrilled that you've all chosen to take psychology, and right now obviously is the most interesting time in terms of human behaviour in the current circumstances. I have tailored my the presentation for you today and the actual work that I'd like you to investigate, really considering the current climate, because it is basically very, very, very unique. And obviously the psychologists have all been reading very much around this current situation and interpreting human behavior like it's never been seen before. So there's a lot of research coming out at the moment, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of analysis that follows the past 3 months and human behavior going forward. So with that in mind and linking it to your syllabus, I would like to obviously make that apparent and maybe make you more aware of human behavior as it is at its current time. So first things first, let me bring up my desktop for you to share here. So let's have a look at the slides. So I've done a lesson here for anybody that's unable to get hold of the video. But what I'd like you to do then as we're going forward, first things first, in psychology, the most important thing for A-level students, all students should have the actual syllabus that you're going to be studying. You should have had a look at this. Certainly one of the things that most students should look at in terms of whether you're going to choose the subject in the first place, and have a look at the content and think, what am I going to study over the next 2 years? It's really important that you know what that is. I've put a link on here for you. I would very much like you to download the specification. You don't need to print off the entire thing because of course it is quite lengthy. The website is the AQA, and that is obviously our examining board that you'll be following. So if I just click into this here, you can see the AQA here. It's obviously free access for everybody. The subjects, you might want to find out which other subjects you're doing and again have a look. But in the psychology syllabus, so this is the current syllabus then valid from September. If you download the specification, as you can see here, and tab down, the subject content here, we've got introductory. Now we're going to go, obviously the first year follows AS as it is. You can actually still sit an AS qualification. We don't do that at Home Green, but in some schools they do. It's not actually counted, I'm afraid, anymore towards your overall mark, whereas in the past, historically, it was. So we now do what's called a linear qualification. So you complete all of the topics over 2 years, you sit 3 exam papers at the end. So this just gives you an idea of subject content. So obviously we are looking then in this first instance, in the first year, you're going to look at social influence, memory, attachments, psychology and context then, approaches, biopsychology, psychopathology, and research methods. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is to print off those first few pages there, make sure they're at the front of your file, because it's important that you tick off as you go along what it is that we're covering. All right, so that's the first bit of housekeeping that I'd like you to look at. All right, so that's the basics. Then obviously this is the textbook. Now the textbook here is by Illuminate Publishing. You can get it secondhand, as you can see there on Amazon. Secondhand is absolutely fine. There is a new textbook for this. Caution, there is a new textbook coming out. The spec, the actual specification hasn't changed. So therefore, the old textbook is absolutely fine for now, and actually it'll probably be a bit cheaper with them publishing an upgrade. But the actual content makes no difference in terms of the exam. So you can obtain this greenhead book, as we call it here, which is fine for use. I have an online version of it here, as you can see. So I can pan in and show you the pages just generally as we're looking through today. So that's the textbook that you will need to obtain, please. There, ISBN numbers have been provided for you over here. And the work that I've set for you is also involving the textbook. So that's your first purchase to make. Okay, the first topic we're going to look at when we come in September then is social influence. And this is, I've deliberately chosen this partly because of the current situation and because it is relevant. As is a lot of the topics you'll cover on the course. However, this idea of how the behaviour of those around us then affect our own behaviour. So social influence is how others affect us in terms of our own individual behaviour. And this, as you can see, has been taken from the specification then. So this is what we will cover under this particular topic. And the types of social influence we're going to look at specifically are conformity and obedience. We're also very interested about those that don't follow social influence, that aren't influenced by those around us. So this is just a slide in terms of, this showed conformity at its best. The loo roll crisis, as I'm sure your families at home will be well aware of, whoever's in charge of purchasing things at your house. But the surge for purchasing toilet rolls was like no other time in history, I don't think. So here's a classic example of people conforming in terms of going out and purchasing as many toilet rolls as they possibly could, which obviously caused a sort of a national crisis. It may even have been an international crisis, because my understanding is this actually originated in Australia. So yes, conformity at its best was everybody purchasing toilet rolls. With that example in mind, obviously, we can look at many different examples that we've had during the lockdown situation here. So here's some images that I wanted to share with you. And as you can see there, top left, this particular image, this is the idea of this new phrase. There's some new terminology that's come out over the last 3 months that affect us on a social influential level. Social distancing is this new phrase, as we're all familiar with, keeping our distance from other people. It's very interesting to psychologists because as human beings, we are not naturally designed to stay away from other people. And you and many other people you know may well have found this whole situation almost intolerable at times. The idea of not being able to go out and see and do whatever it is that you want, so that feeling of confinement and restraint has been very challenging. We are not naturally designed to behave in that way, and therefore this again throws up many interesting concepts within psychology. So social distancing, keeping away from each other. We're conforming to these guidelines. We are following these examples, or what we're being told to do. And I'm sure you have witnessed this, as I have every day. I witness this idea of people keeping away from me in case I am contagious. Because this is what obviously we have now been told that we must do in the event of for safety reasons. This particular image here, again, conforming to purchasing groceries and things from the supermarket, and how we behave in the supermarkets now. Hopefully you haven't had to go to supermarkets too often, but I certainly have as the member of the household. And the behaviour around the supermarket has changed drastically to what I'm normally used to in terms of doing the household shop. And overall, human behaviour has changed as well in terms of how they shop and when they shop. So again, in just the space of 12 weeks, this behaviour is adapting and changing. We're conforming to how we should now behave in these supermarkets. And interestingly, next week, many other shops will be opening up, and shops that you probably prefer to go into rather than the supermarket. And again, you will become aware of how people are now acting differently in those shops. Have you seen these pictures on the windowsills? Everybody, you know, created the rainbow there for the NHS as it started out. We certainly got one hanging in our house in the window upstairs. My son created a very large one. But again, do we feel we should do that? Are we conforming? Should we have the rainbow displayed in the front window there? This is the queuing example. I don't think this is IKEA. It may well be another shop. It may well be IKEA, but there was obviously the news reel of IKEA and the 3-mile long queue. Everybody standing 2 meters apart, all around, sort of interlinked around the car park. Absolutely hysterical as soon as the doors opened. And again, why? You know, why was everybody dashing out to get to IKEA? There's a whole host of reasons. But the conformity in terms of how people are doing what they're told is quite staggering. And that was on a large scale that you could really see it. Clapping. How many of you have been clapping every week on a Thursday to thank our NHS and the key workers and all those that are helping keeping the country going? How many of you felt that you had to go out and stand outside the front of your houses? Maybe you wanted to go outside and stand out and share with your neighbours in that way. Maybe you've realised who your neighbours are, because I certainly have. I had no idea who lived down my street, but I'm more familiar with who lives there now. And lastly, conformity, keep away. We were told to keep home, stay home, keep away from public places and spaces. And there's many images now on the internet of parks, obviously, open spaces. When originally the lockdown started, these places were obviously vacant and nobody was around. However, that has changed over recent weeks. So these are just current COVID conformity examples I wanted to share with you. So looking at the task then, so what I'd like you to do with the conformity task, in your textbook, I'd like you to read page 16 to 17 on conformity. So what is conformity? And there's many different types, but the syllabus requires you to look at 3 different types of conformity. And what reasons do we actually conform? So there's 3 types of conformity that can take place, and then why do we actually do it? So, for example, I've given you an idea there, applying the terms of an example of lockdown behaviour. So people bought masses of loo rolls because they identified, this is a type, with others who they see themselves similar to themselves, obviously behaving in this way. So identification is identifying with other people that we see similar to ourselves, and then we go along with doing the same behaviours that we see. Well, they must be doing it for a perfectly good reason, stacking their trolleys high with toilet rolls, so therefore I must do that too. And he looks sort of similar to me, so therefore he's obviously got a good reason for doing it. So I'm going to stack my trolley too. The reason why somebody bought masses of toilet rolls for, I didn't buy 400 loo rolls, and hopefully you didn't either, but I'm obviously exaggerating there, but the reason is what we call informational influence. So we look to others, often in situations then when we want to know, we're looking for information from other people as to how we should behave. How should we behave in this situation? So now is a very interesting time because it's unique, because it's different, because none of this has ever happened before in our lifetimes. So we are looking towards each other. How should I behave in this situation? What if the loo rolls run out? What if I'm never going to find a toilet roll again? And all kind of common sense of thinking that these production lines are never going to produce toilet rolls again sort of goes out the window. But we lose sight of that in the panic and hysteria, obviously, that sort of ensued. So here we would argue that, particularly in a situation where we don't know what is going to happen and we're unsure, very unsure of the situation itself, we look to others to guide our behaviour. We don't ask them, we watch, we observe. And this is taking what we call informational influence from others in how to behave. So that is on page 16 and 17 of your textbook. So if I just flick over here, you'll see types of conformity and then the 2 key reasons why people conform? So have a little read to make sense of those definitions. Okay, so they say follow the herd. So there's most interesting, there's some very interesting studies. The first study that came out on conformity was discovered back in the 1950s, 60s, and the first person to research it was a chap called Solomon Asch. Very, very famous line study experiment. There's a really interesting clip on YouTube here, just in terms of how conformity has been assessed in modern day, and you can watch that clip there, which will just show how easy it is that conformity occurs, and in an interesting lecture hall scenario there. So have a little look at the clip, a couple of minutes long there. What reasons did the audience give as to why they applauded? So I want you to think about why they applauded, and what does this tell us about human behavior then in terms of conformity and just general human behavior? You can have a look at a modern day replication of Asch's line study. Asch's line study is available to also watch online. You can see the original setup there. It's very old, and it's black and white as a film clip, but you can actually see it. And again, what does this tell us about why humans conform? So have a little look and think about just other examples there of conformity. Moving on, another type of social influence that we have, which also has been very relevant at this current time, is obedience. And again, there's some very interesting research by a chap called Stanley Milgram, who was working at Princetown University. And Milgram also was interested in why people obeyed. Why do we do as we're told? Here's the interesting. This was the government, obviously the interesting government slogans that initially came out during the crisis. Stay home, protect the NHS and save lives. Stay home, don't leave your home. You know, literally lockdown meant stay home. So lock the doors and don't let anyone in. And we are still in a form of lockdown, as we know, at this moment in time. And now there's the image here. We've got mother and child working on laptops at home. Working from home has become this current situation for many, many households. But what I'd like you to do is have a look at the actual original experiment of obedience and consider the reasons why do we do as we're told. You can also consider why people don't do as they're told. So why have people not obeyed the government guidelines in the current situation? And again, if you have a look at page 22 in the textbook in here, this is Milgram's original study, and obviously the evaluation is always the pluses and minuses of what this tells us about human behaviour in this instance. So have a little look at Milgram's study there, and again, relate it to the current situation. Just an extra bit of psychology here, going slightly off into extra depths of psychology. This is about altruism, and it's not on your specification, but it's definitely worth looking at because, again, it links to the current situation. So altruism then is the principle and moral practice of concern for happiness of others, human beings or animals, resulting in a quality of life, both material and spiritual. So we're talking about helping others for no gain whatsoever to ourselves. And there is this debate about altruism as to whether there is such a thing as pure altruism. Do we help others then to gain absolutely nothing in return? And this has been a theory that has been debated over many, many decades. And I'd like you to just extend your thinking of human behavior and have a look at the TED talk here. This is a professor talking about how obviously effective is altruism then, and considering different types of altruism and giving examples of altruism when people have helped others. But it may not be a financial gain you're after. It may just be a feeling of wow, great, I helped that person. But is that a gain? Is it still a gain? And it's this idea that then is, can you actually do it without wanting nothing from it at all? Obviously, acts of kindness, there's been many acts of kindness, which has been brilliant to see, and just shows the human spirit really in current times. So obviously we've got Major Tom Moore there on the left. And again, you know, was he doing that for himself? There's the question. Was he doing that really to help the NHS, to raise the money? Yes, I'm sure he was. But again, the debate is, does he gain anything from it in terms of altruism? There's many people that have set up food banks and, you know, helping people to obviously, you know, to get through this current situation. There's so many different charities and volunteers out there at the moment who I hope, you know, in your local community, you know who those people are. Maybe some of you, maybe your family, maybe people you know have been helping as much as they can too. But again, all these different acts of kindness, maybe it's just a neighbour leaving something on your doorstep. Could have been a cake, who knows? But something that somebody's done. What I'd like you to do is just think about, write an article to explain why some people, are more altruistic than others. Why do you think some people are more altruistic than others? Is that due to their personality? Is it something to do with themselves? But I'd like you to also just include an example of altruism then. What have you witnessed? Could be something, if you haven't witnessed it personally in your household, maybe it's something you've seen on the news. But try to think, make it personal to you. It's more interesting to talk about, you know, what altruistic acts of kindness have you experienced from your family, or maybe something you've witnessed in the news that really struck you as a particularly kind act that somebody did. And I'd like you to bring that article to your first lesson in September. I'd like you to bring your thoughts on all of these, obviously, to the lesson. But your writing then is to produce this article about acts of kindness. There's some extra links there for psychology and altruism reading, and they're linking into to qualified web pages there. So we've got the British Psychological Society, we've got the American Psychiatric Association, and we've got Open University at the bottom there. So decent resources that I've obviously sourced there for you to have a little bit further reading. And extended reading then generally for psychology. There are three. I'm not going to bombard you with tons of reading because I think there's plenty that you can read in the textbook. I also think there's whenever you open the newspaper, it's all about human behavior. So tuning into what's going on around you means you are actively interested in what people are doing. So following the news is a great example in how people are responding to, there's lots of current issues at the moment that are in the news that you could also relate to just in terms of observing human behavior. But the BPS Digest then, British Psychological Society is our overarching body, governing body, if you like, for psychology here in the UK. And the Digest offers you current research. So all the current research studies, this is accessible. You can have it as an app onto your phone. You can have it into your email inbox. But if you're interested in what we're researching at the moment in the area of human behavior, and there will be pages over after this in terms of the current situation, this will spur a sort of global investigation into human behavior in so many different ways, which is good if you're thinking of going into the psychology arena, because of course, hopefully there'll be more jobs in those areas. Simply Psychology is a student resource, which is very well recommended there, and again helps you looking at notes and things in terms of just what you need to be covering for the spec. And Tutor to You, again, I've found this during lockdown, this is fantastic. Webinars, exam techniques and lessons, they're all via YouTube. There is an extensive playlist there for psychology on every topic, and there are many resources on their website, Tutor to You, which are highly recommended and extremely valuable. So sometimes it's finding a different way of learning, other than, obviously, sometimes I can explain things in the classroom and maybe you walk away thinking, I didn't quite understand that. It's about being proactive and trying to find your own way through in terms of, well, let me go and see if I can research it somewhere else and try and find a different way of learning it. Maybe some other mechanism can help you understand. So that last link there is very useful. Okay. So all in all, I look forward to welcome you all back in September and meeting you all. And If there's any queries in the meantime, do feel free to email me, obviously, cooksanelle@homegreen. And I wish you all well for the summer, and stay safe, and let's hope we're all back in the classroom in September. But in the meantime, enjoy reading psychology and observe the world around you. It's a very, very interesting time. Thank you.